Hey everyone, this is my updated Infernalist minion leveling guide for Path of Exile 2 patch 0.2. It has timestamps, a written and very detailed mobalytics guide, a path of building of course, a loot filter even, and this video is going mostly over the POB and some useful links in the description as well. Let's dive in. Leveling as an Infernalist in 0.2 after the initial nerfs and later buffs is still very smooth. It's even a bit smoother compared to the previous patch, I would say, because we're using Chaos Dots in the Act 1, which mitigates that rough minion start that we had before. Let's look at the pros and cons, starting with the pros of this leveling build. 1. Smooth progression and easy scaling, with a few stats only, making it easy to gear. 2. Summoner playstyle, which allows you to focus on other stuff like the boss mechanics or picking up some loot. 3. It's SSF friendly, this whole guide was done in SSF and I really play only solo self-found. 4. Fairly tanky, with energy shield, block and minions that block your hits. 5. This is a known meta archetype, which allows for an easy transition into other endgame variants. You can even transition these days into a new ascendancy. The cons. 1. It's reliant on minion gear early on, although it's not as bad as it used to be. 2. It's quite slow in terms of movement speed, exacerbated by the fact you are spam casting Flame Wall. 3. Minion AI. It's not as bad as it was, but it's not amazing either. And 4. Visual clarity. There's a lot of fire going on the screen. For gear, focus on getting plus levels to minions, spirit, life, energy shield and resistances. Plus level to minions can be found on scepters, amulets and helmets. Spirit is found on scepters, amulets and body armors, and you should try to get a rattling scepter for the skeletal warriors. In 0.2 I think that's mandatory at this point, as there's no other way anymore to summon skeletal warriors. For the order in which to upgrade skills, I refer you to the mobalytics guide. It has a great list over there, separated per act. Defense comes from a few areas in this build. 1. Block from the shield. 2. Energy shield from gear. 3. Minions blocking stuff for you. Offense comes from 1. Minion skills by plus minion levels and spirit, so you get more minions. 2. Buffs like Pain Offering, which increases minion damage and attack speed. 3. Curses and fire exposure of enemies with flammability and the minions, so their fire resistance is reduced. And 4. Increased minion damage against ignited enemies. I decided to structure this video in line with the mobalytics guide, meaning I will go over each act, pointing out skills, support gems and the passive tree, so you can see the synergy there as well. To swap acts in the path of building, you can use the loadouts in the top right. If you play this as a league starter, which I did, it's very important to do all the side quests in Act 1 so you can get all the skill and support gems. In the passive tree we start with spell and minion damage. The initial increases in damage are impactful and we use Unearth, which is both a spell and a bunch of minions for Act 1. We path towards Restless Dead and we're taking attributes we need for our support gems along the way. In skills, our main skill is Unearth, supported by Martial Tempo and Execute. I'm sure that's not optimal, but we will use these support gems later for other skills. And we're starting here, we're league starting, so we don't have an infinite supply of support gems. Contagion is spread by Unearth minions, but we're not supporting Contagion for that same reason. Our main minions for this build are Skeletal Arsonists, and in Act 1 they're supported by Scattershot and Fire Infusion. Scattershot makes them throw 3 projectiles, increasing clear quite a bit. Fire Infusion is extra fire damage, which helps. There aren't that many great support gems for Arsonists at first. I'm assuming you have a Rattling Scepter, providing you 2 skeletal warriors. They're supported by Sacrificial Lamb, which doesn't show up in the POB, and Meat Shield. The Sacrificial Lamb support gem is a new support gem that lets your offerings target this specific minion. It's super useful, we want to sacrifice warriors and not arsonists. Our final skill is Pain Offering, providing a bunch of attack speed for minions supported by Expanse for more AoE. I'm using a shield, so we have Raise Shield, that's true for all the acts. And we're taking Raging Spirits from the quest, but we don't activate it in Act 1 because it's just bad. You really should get an Arsonist instead. At the end of Act 1, depending on gear, I am walking around with 3 Arsonists and 2 warriors plus a bunch of bone constructs from Unearth. In terms of playstyle, you can cast Contagion, you use Unearth, and then any corpses that died of Chaos Dot damage are resurrected as a Chaos Dot Bone construct, which in turn applies Contagion again. This is quite effective in Act 1, but falls off already in Act 2, so don't be tempted to keep using this strategy. It's not great unless you start using more and more Chaos spells, but that kind of defeats the purpose of Infernalist minions. In Act 2, we get rid of the Chaos Dot minions and we go fully into our Infernal army. For the passive tree, we take Crystalline Flesh. I personally feel growing Swarm on this cluster isn't useful until much later. I would rather have minion revive speed in the early campaign, so we are pathing towards Living Death. And we're going towards Lord of Horrors to be able to summon more minions. You could make an argument for the Profane Commander cluster, but my argument for not taking it just yet is that you don't have that much spirit, so 10% increased spirit at low levels isn't great. We will take this after the campaign. For skills, I'm only covering what has changed from Act 1. Arsonists and Warriors, for example, are the same. Unearth is gone, we are now completely fire-based. Raging Spirits is enabled, supported by Martial Tempo and Execute, which was previously on Unearth. We get the Flammability Curse, but we don't support it until much later. We get Flame Wall to add flat fire damage to the Arsonist's projectile attack and to summon Raging Spirits. It is supported by Arcane Tempo and Fortress. The latter casts it in a circle, so it surrounds enemies, making all the projectiles pass through the wall. I'm using Solar Orb, that's an optional tech, because of its low cast time. One Solar Orb ignites enemies and summons 2 Raging Spirits. With the Overabundance support, you can summon 2 Solar Orbs for 4 Raging Spirits. From your first Ascendancy, you are getting the Loyal Hellhound, a permanent minion supported by Last Gasp and the Elemental Army because he dies a lot at the start. The playstyle in Act 2 is that you run around, you cast Solar Orbs and Flame Walls to summon Raging Spirits and to buff those projectile attacks, and then the minions they do the work, like it should be. This remains the playstyle for the rest of the game. In Act 3, you start getting significant upgrades for the build. You get level 2 support gems, you have a chance to find Jeweler Orbs, and your gear should improve as well. In Act 3, the build is mostly fully online and it is smooth sailing from this point onwards. For our Ascendancy, the second one, we take Altered Flesh. It will make us a bit tankier, assuming you have some fire resistance, which you should prioritize. The passive tree paths towards a bunch of major nodes, providing minion life damage, attack speed, revive speed, and accuracy. Accuracy at low minion levels is important, especially Raging Spirits have low accuracy. We make our way to Vile Mending afterwards, but we don't quite get there in Act 3. As we have access to level 2 support gems, there are a few changes. The Hellhound, Skeletal Warriors, and Arsonists are now on a 4-link. The Hellhound gets Loyalty as the third support gem. This is a new gem that has the Hellhound take 10% of damage instead of you. Raging Spirits are supported by Bullseye to mitigate their low native accuracy at lower levels. Pain Offering is now also supported by Persistence for more duration. The Arsonists have Feeding Frenzy as their third support gem for more damage. Assuming you find an on-par Rattling Scepter, meaning in the level range that you are leveling right now, the minions will have 3 links and you can support them with Death March. This has great synergy with Sacrificial Lamb, so every time you sacrifice a warrior using an offering, it targets the warriors and they then also heal and cleanse ailments of other minions. I call it Act 4, but it's Act 1 cruel, for now at least. In the passive tree, we take Vile Mending, which we were pathing to. This makes minions die way less often. And then we make our way all the way to Silent Guardian for more resistances. We will also soon take the other nodes over here. For skills, not that many changes, as we still only have level 2 support gems. Assuming you find more Jeweler Orbs, you will have Raging Spirit at a 4-link, and I support them with Fire Penetration. They do 70% fire damage and 30% physical damage, so this is a decent support gem. If you have a Jeweler Orb for Flame Wall, you can add Arcane Surge. This mitigates the mana costs somewhat, and the rest of the skills haven't changed. Act 5 brings level 3 support gems, allowing us significant upgrades. In the passive tree, we complete the cluster that we stopped at for more minion life and damage. We also complete that other cluster with growing swarm, and we start pathing towards living death. For skills, some changes of course. The Hellhound is now supported by fire exposure, which reduces enemy fire resistance by 20%. In Act 5, we can also add our last skill, the Skeletal Cleric, which heals and revives minions. He is supported by Elemental Army for now, which was previously on the Hellhound. Pain Offering gets another support gem for even more AoE, magnified effect. Finally, Flammability gets some support for the first time in this run, with Persistence that we already had, and Inspiration to reduce the mana cost of this curse. If you find more level 3 support gems than I did, you can already look at the Act 6 skill overview for the final support gem setup. In the passive tree in Act 6 we make it to living death for those resistances. I'm also taking lightning and cold resistance to round out the minion defenses. I think arsonists have a high base fire resistance natively, and I'm also taking ingenuity for extra intelligence, as leveling all these minion skill gems requires a lot of int. Finally, we start making our way to Profane Commander, but we don't get there, not in Act 6. For skills, as we now find more level 3 support gems, the Hellhound is also supported by Strip Away. This makes exposure 20% more potent, so now monsters have minus 28% fire resistance from exposure instead of 20%. The Skeletal Cleric is on a 4-link, he gets Last Gasp and Elemental Army to keep him alive, and Ingenuity that reduces cooldown so he heals and revives more often. The Arsonists get Immolate instead of Fire Infusion. This is a lot more damage against ignited enemies, and we're always igniting enemies. I moved the Fire Infusion to the Skeletal Warriors just because we have a link, and that's it for the acts. Finally, I have also created a loot filter. Use this at your own risk. What it basically does is hide all the items that you can't use, like bows, and also base armor types that you don't want, like armor and evasion, pure evasion, that sort of stuff. And even later down the line, also energy shield evasion, because you just don't have the attribute points to use that. I leveled using this loot filter myself, but there's no guarantee for success here, and it's always a little risky to use someone else's filter. I do recommend you alter it to your liking, or at least go over it in detail so you see what it does. Please check out the other resources, they're all in the description, the written guide on mobalytics, which I put a lot of effort in, the detailed path of building, the loot filter, it's all that good stuff. But most of all, I hope you enjoy the build and the guide. It's still completely fine. It's a smooth leveling path into the endgame of Path of Exile 2 using minions. I hope you had a good time watching the video. Let me know what you think, and also let me know if you have any suggestions or questions, or if I made some errors. I'm happy to help or admit I did something wrong. Subscribe and like for more PoE SSF content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.